Before we begin, a quick listener advisory. This episode includes sometimes graphic accounts of domestic violence. If you or a loved one has experienced that, please use discretion while listening. Welcome to Where Secrets Go to Die, the disappearance of Derrick Henagan. From the Detroit Free Press, I'm John Wisely. When we left off last time, we were talking about the blue jug that we'd found in the woods. We thought that it might contain evidence of human remains. It didn't, but those woods remain an important part of this story, especially because they were so close to the home of State Trooper David Moeggenborg. He was at Diana's house the day that Derrick Henagan disappeared. He took that stolen guns complaint from Diana Maddox early that morning. But he was never one of the main investigators on the disappearance case. Most of that work was done by other troopers and by detectives, guys who were his colleagues and his buddies. But Moeggenborg's name will forever be linked to the Henagan case, for all the wrong reasons. When we joined that search for Derrick's remains, we were near Moeggenborg's house. How close? Well, let me put it this way. If I teed it up high and caught my driver just right, I could hit a golf ball from Mo's back door to the edge of that property. And I'm nobody's Tiger Woods. So what brought us there? What made Mike and Bert think that in a peninsula covered in forest, that particular stretch of woods might be the key to finding Derrick's remains? Well, it came from a tip from David Moeggenborg's daughter, who recounted following her father into those woods one August day in 2014.
I saw this. I thought it looked like a body. And then when I looked up, I saw him and he was glaring at me across the embankment. It was just like, it was a cold look, like nobody was there.
David Moeggenborg grew up in Alma, Michigan. That's a town of about 9,000 people near the center of the Lower Peninsula. He worked in the county jail there to begin his career.
Well, I met him through my mom.
That's Amy Asher, Dave's first wife.
My mom worked at the Gratiot County Sheriff's Department in the kitchen, and he was a reserve officer, and he worked for corrections, and he was finishing up his college degree and hoping to join MSP.
They met in 1994, and later that year, they had a daughter, Megan. Dave was 24 at the time. Amy was not quite 20. MSP is the Michigan State Police, which Dave joined in January of 1995. But before he could work as a trooper, Dave had to complete the State Police Academy.
He was excited about becoming a state trooper, about being a cop, and he just was excited.
Over the past 38 years, thousands of men and women have started out as recruits and completed their training to become Michigan State Troopers.
You might be put in a physical altercation with somebody where your body is just exhausted to the point where you don't think you can continue, and then that's when the mental part kicks in.
Recruits have 45 minutes to eat, shower, and get ready for room inspections, making sure both their partner and themselves are put together head to toe. No room for even a hair out of place.
He spent 4 months in the academy, and it affected Dave in ways that Amy had not anticipated.
When he went into the police academy, the first couple of times he came home, he would do nothing but cry. He'd pack his bag on Sunday to return, and he'd pack his bag and cry. And I'd say, what's wrong? And he wouldn't say nothing. He would just cry, say his goodbyes, and be gone.
Now, the tears, they did eventually end. They were replaced by hard stares from those pale blue eyes.
And at one point, he was different. He was different after he'd been to the academy. It was like he had to take on this, I'm strong, I'm tough guy. The old guy's gone. I'm someone different now, because that's how it seemed. He wasn't the same when he graduated from that academy.
Whatever his misgivings, David Moeggenborg pressed ahead. After graduating from the academy, he continued to study to advance his career, and he was learning to be a dad.
Tell us about what kind of dad he was growing up before all the trouble started.
He was a decent dad. He would do stuff with me. He was really involved.
That's his daughter, Meghan.
Snow forts, sledding, snowmobiling, telling me that I should eat my food because Pocahontas, another Disney princess, would eat the same thing I was going to eat, stuff like that. So he was funny. He had a funny side. He would always laugh and joke around. We would go outside and he'd push me on my swing. We'd play with the dogs.
And at work, he completed training for things like drunken driving detection, traffic crash investigation, photography for law enforcement, and conducting a forensic interview of a child. He was an excellent marksman as well, earning distinguished expert on several shooting tests. So that was the public David Moeggenborg, the one that people around town saw. But toward his wife at the time, he acted very differently. Just a heads up, if you've been affected by domestic violence, some of this will sound familiar, and it may be difficult to hear.
I did start to see some, trails of deceit as far as like what he kept from me, what he shared with me about other women that he was involved with, in the early part of our relationship.
Amy said Dave continued dating coworkers that he'd seen before he met her. When she confronted him, he admitted it.
He'd say, well, it was before I met you, and, I knew them before I met you, so you can't hold that against me. And I'm like, but you're still involved with them and you're with me, so therefore it is my concern. And he just didn't think I had a right to have a problem with that.
That was just the beginning. Soon after, Amy developed health problems that required several abdominal surgeries. Amy said Dave showed no sympathy. She said he even kicked her in the stomach not long after one of them, rupturing her sutures to the point that she had to return to the hospital. Once, after a Valentine date, Amy said he backhanded her in the face on the car ride home. She said the strike broke her nose and blackened both eyes. Another time, he kicked her in the jaw and she needed medical attention. But Amy said she didn't tell the doctors why.
He was all the time telling me, I can kill you and nobody will ever know. Nobody will ever investigate it because I'm a cop and I know how to carry it out. I know how to do it. And I'd be able to hide you. Nobody would ever find you. He'd say that snitches and bitches end up in ditches, and there's so many places in the UP that I can hide you.
There were other times he'd leave her at their rural home outside Newberry, alone with their young daughter, Meghan. Amy said he'd take the phones with him, so she couldn't call anyone downstate. He took her name off the checking account, so she couldn't access money. Amy said that once he became angry at her, and he took it out on the family cat, which had been a gift from her mother. He threw the cat out of the house in the middle of a thunderstorm. Amy could hear it crying, so she went out and brought it inside.
He had his gun on me when I walked back in the door. And he told me, turn around, get on your knees right now, get on your knees. And he wanted me to face away from him. And he wanted me to let go of the cat, and I refused to let go of the cat because I was afraid he was going to shoot the cat.
This kind of thing went on for 6 or 7 years. Sure, Amy said she'd leave him at times, but she'd go back out of desperation. He'd promised to go to counseling, to change. Amy also said that she told the state police about his behavior repeatedly.
I feel like they chose to look the other way. Like they heard stuff was happening, they were seeing it, but I honestly feel like they chose to look the other way because they liked him. They liked him because he had that nature where he could blend in. He could get along with almost anyone. He was very charming. So in the beginning, it was very hard for them to believe that the stuff I was alleging was true. I mean, I understand that, but I had no reason to lie about it. and wish that they would have listened. I wish they would have listened.
Amy eventually did divorce him, but she still trembles sometimes when she talks about him. And Meghan said the divorce changed her relationship with her dad as well.
And after my mom and my dad had separated, I was like 6, 7. I was like 7. Things started to go downhill. His whole demeanor towards me changed. Like, he was angry, dismissive. He would put me in a closet and lock me in a closet if I had asked for my mom. And I'd cry and cry.
Now, when I first heard some of this, I was skeptical. It's my job to be skeptical. It's also not hard to find people who will describe their exes or even their estranged parents in the worst terms. But a lot of this, well, it's documented in court records, letters to the court, requests for personal protection orders, even therapy records. Still, I wanted to know more. After Amy and Dave divorced, Dave remarried to a woman named Renee Botbill. I wanted to talk to her as well to see if she could confirm a pattern.
I mean, literally, nobody would ever believe anything because, like, in everybody's eyes, he was perfect.
That's Renee.
He was charming and handsome and amazing. And I give him that. He was an amazing state trooper, and he was amazing to people, and people loved him.
But Renee said that when he was out of the public eye, he was a far different man. Documents describe times when Dave punched her in the stomach, spit in her face, threatened to kill the whole family, then burn down the house. Renee doesn't live in the Upper Peninsula anymore, or even in Michigan. We tracked her down in a small town in Kentucky. She moved there to get away from the cold and away from Dave. When she agreed to talk to us, we headed south. It's about a 7-hour drive from Detroit. We drove south to Cincinnati, crossed the bridge into Kentucky, then headed west toward Louisville. We interviewed Renee and her son, Hunter, at her home. The living room was a bit loud for recording purposes, so we dragged chairs from the kitchen table into a quiet bedroom and settled in for a 2-hour conversation.
Do the kids know to be real quiet? Okay.
It was worth the trip.
All right, should we get started? What do you think? Okay. Why don't we start with you, Renee?
Renee told us she met Dave in June 2001. She was working in the State Police Dispatch Center. A coworker set them up on a date.
And we went out, and after that, it was always constant charm and roses and flowers and just cards, and everything was fine.
6 months later, he finalized his divorce from Amy, then proposed to Renee. They married the following month, and their son was born 4 months after that. But Renee said things were not always charms and roses.
He was like Jekyll and Hyde, you know. I always say like the front row Catholic family man, but behind closed doors, he could be an absolute monster.
Now, Hunter is Renee's son from her first marriage. He was 7 years old when his mom married Dave. Renee said Dave didn't like Hunter at all. He would belittle him, pick on him. He would even burn some of Hunter's things in an outdoor wood burner.
Describe some of the things that he burned over the course of your relationship.
Stuffed animals, pictures, my clothes, school paperwork, like awards, trophies, my hockey equipment.
That's Hunter. He's grown up now, serving in the military. But he says he still has nightmares about Dave. And while Dave was technically Hunter's stepfather, Hunter never refers to him as Dad. He always calls him Dave. Renee, she remembers it too. She said Dave had this need to erase parts of their lives that didn't include him.
Anything of mine that was from before I married him is gone. Everything.
All my baby pictures, I umbilical cord box with like the ultrasound pictures.
There were other things that Dave did that just sound mean. Renee said Dave would take pictures that included Hunter's biological father and literally poke the eyes out of them. Now, some of the controlling things they say Dave did related to the property that we searched in episode 1. Hunter liked to hunt deer there, so he installed a tree stand. That's a platform that attaches to a tree with straps. Hunters like them because being up high makes it easier to spot deer. Hunter said Dave cut the straps on the stand. It collapsed when Hunter stepped onto it. Hunter had to grab onto a tree branch to keep from falling 20 feet. Now, Renee, she tells more horror stories involving Dave. In addition to physical abuse, she said he was mentally abusive. And she was in a serious car crash in 2004. She spent the next couple of years dealing with a series of surgeries related to it. But Renee said Dave kept up his abuse. A few months after the crash, Renee mentioned Hunter's dad. Dave was pissed. He approached her in the kitchen and punched her in the stomach. Hunter witnessed it. Renee said she reported it to Dave's bosses at the state police, and he was reprimanded for it. When he got home, he was angry.
And he came in the bedroom, and he turned the light on and put a pillow over my head, like trying to suffocate me.
Renee tried to fight him off. He responded by making a specific threat if she were to call his bosses again.
And he stuck his finger in my face and told me if I had any more contact with the state police, that he would cut my fucking nose off. He would make comments like, go ahead. They're not gonna believe you over me. No judge is gonna believe you. You have a brain injury. You call me a fucking gimp, and excuse my mouth.
There were other things Hunter found creepy about him, too. When Hunter's female friends would come over to the house, he said Dave would watch them. He would peek around corners at them.
There was pornography all over the house that he would blame on Hunter. I can remember when I first met him, there was boxes and boxes of pornography, videos and magazines. And the videos were just terrible.
Renee and Hunter also said Dave had a strange understanding of his role as a husband, a father, and a trooper.
He would say he was God's warrior and women are subservient to him, like the man is to...
Like he's in power of his life and his world.
Yeah.
God sent him on this planet to take out the bad and the evil.
We'll be back after the break. And we're back. God's warrior. That's a term that Amy and Meghan had heard as well. Meghan said Dave considered himself judge, jury, and executioner. Renee said she tried to tell his bosses, but it never did much good.
The state police knew that how he was tormenting me and Hunter. The state police literally knew, and there's no paperwork, there's nothing bad in his file to show that, But then again, like it always was, Dave as a trooper or Dave as a family man. Well, he was a great trooper and great at his job. It's not their business to get involved in family business.
I wanted to know what the state police did document. So I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for Dave Moeggenborg's personnel file. The state police sent me 148 pages, but none of it was negative. Not a single internal affairs report. Now, luckily, Meghan had given me a copy of an internal affairs report that she had. It referenced several other internal affairs reports and their file numbers. Now, my original request had asked for any internal investigations, but the state police told me those records are stored in a separate system, apart from the personnel file. So I filed another request for those, by number. That request cost $155 and took almost 5 months to complete. But the response I received stunned me by its size alone. More than 400 pages of internal investigation reports. That's more than twice the size of his entire personnel file. I had never seen that much paperwork on a single cop, especially one who hadn't been fired. The bad news is the reports were heavily redacted. That means someone at the state police read through them and blacked out portions of the report. The law in Michigan does allow redactions for certain specific reasons, including privacy. But these records, there were whole pages that were nothing but black ink, not a single readable word. I was also told that they had 6 hours of audio, but I received about 18 minutes. And they redacted the audio files, too. Instead of using a black marker to blot out words on a page, they use silence in the recording, so you can't hear what's being said. Here's some of the file they did provide.
Hey, this is a digital recording. It's an interview between Lieutenant Todd Johnston and First Lieutenant David Hopper. We're at the Sault Ste. Marie Post.
It's a 2013 discussion between Internal Affairs and Moeggenborg's former post commander, his boss, in essence.
We talked a little bit about a couple of incidents that you were aware of, some reported between Trooper Moeggenborg and can you tell me a little bit about the first one that you recall?
Hear that silence? Those are the redactions. By reading between the lines of the files they did provide, and with Megan's unredacted report of one of the incidents, I confirmed that Dave was accused of domestic violence and child abuse. And state police did investigate him for it. He was suspended for 68 days during one investigation. I learned that he was subjected to a personal protection order. That order prevented him from possessing a gun. Of course, it was later amended so he could carry one. I learned that Dave was accused of striking his son repeatedly with a canoe paddle. In a December 2013 memo to Moeggenborg, the state police wrote, quote, "The department has determined that you committed part or all of the alleged misconduct. Therefore, the investigation has been closed as sustained." Besides the 68-day suspension during the investigation, it's unclear if he faced any additional discipline. The state police did turn over their findings to Luce County prosecutor Josh Freed, but he declined to press criminal charges. He called the accusations against Moeggenborg troubling, but said there wasn't enough evidence to prove child abuse. Now, some people in the UP might suspect he caught a break because he's a cop. Freed even addressed those suspicions in a letter, declining to press charges. Quote, "I would like to take a moment to attempt to clear up any concerns regarding cover-ups, conspiracies, or bias," Freed wrote. "To the best of my knowledge, I have no history with any of the individuals involved in this report." End quote. Freed said he saw nothing improper in the investigation. About 9 months after Freed wrote that letter, Moeggenborg was under investigation again in neighboring Schoolcraft County. This time, he was accused of stalking and harassing Renee. By then, they were separated and in the process of divorce. The report on this case that the state police sent me was heavily redacted, though a copy I got from the county prosecutor was cleaner and easy to follow. Renee said Dave wanted to continue their relationship, and she didn't. She said he texted and called excessively about stuff unrelated to the kids, and even staked out their home once to see if they were around. He left lengthy voicemails, he insulted her, and he threatened her. He frequently propositioned her for sex. She said she was afraid of him and ended up getting a personal protection order. An investigator for Child Protective Services wrote to the detectives. She wanted to know if there were services Moeggenborg could get through the Michigan State Police. Quote, "It appears that Mr. Moeggenborg is not thinking rationally, and I am very concerned for the safety of the entire family." End quote. She also wrote, quote, "He feels he is untouchable as far as law enforcement and rules are concerned." End quote. The state police redacted those lines from the report they provided to me. The Schoolcraft County prosecutor, Tim Noble, reviewed the report and wrote, quote, "I do not see enough evidence to warrant prosecution," end quote. Reading these accounts and talking to Renee and Hunter, Amy and Meghan, I got the feeling of déjà vu. Their stories of living with Dave were remarkably similar. But despite all of the turmoil in his personal life, some of which did get investigated, he never gets fired. From what I could tell, Dave Moeggenborg's troubled personal life wasn't enough to end his career. You still see evidence of that idealistic young man who was excited about being a cop. In 2009, Dave, or Mo as his colleagues called him, even won a life-saving award. A drunken driving suspect attempted suicide in his cell. Dave and his partner spotted the man, and they raced to save him. The man was unconscious when Dave and his partner revived him with CPR and then helped load him onto a stretcher. The man survived. Here's another interesting career note. Dave scored a spot on the Executive Protection Unit for then Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. Those troopers are kind of like the Secret Service agents who protect presidents. But Dave's family troubles continued, and the strangest story about them came from his daughter, Meghan, whom he'd had with his first wife, Amy. Now, she was just a kid when her parents divorced. Meghan said her father had been abusive towards her. She lived with her mom downstate. But by August 2014, Dave's second divorce was final. Dave had been ill, and he invited Meghan to come up to visit him. Meghan agreed. She was 19 then, and remember, this is now 6 years after Derrick Henagan disappeared. Meghan said she expected to spend time with her dad. Her dad, he had other ideas. His main concern at that point was his now second ex-wife, Renee. She had come by the house while Dave was away to pick up some things she got in the divorce. Dave was furious, and Meghan, she was blindsided.
Well, he got me all the way up there, and it wasn't to spend time with me. He wanted me to guard his home. And once we got up there, he was acting really weird, saying that, he was wanting to show me where all the guns were. He had a gun for each doorway, like by the door. He told me that if she were to come to the house, that he wanted me to drop her with the gun if she were to come in the house.
Meghan said she was shocked by her dad's request. She struggled to process what he was saying.
I told him that I was not going to do it. And he says, well, if you're any kind of daughter, you will. And I told him that, I didn't have to do that. I would call the cops if I had had a problem. He looked at me with this blank expression, and he said, Meghan, I am the cops, and I'm telling you, drop her.
Her dad then tried to teach her how to shoot a gun. She said she was scared. She didn't feel comfortable.
He wanted me to shoot her with a rifle. He had it loaded. He kept it loaded. He looked at me and he said, if she comes in here, I want you to not even think about it. I want you to shoot the wall or the window. He's like, make it look like a struggle happened. He's like, then I want you not even thinking about it. Just aim it at her and pull the trigger.
Meghan said he told her not to worry about it. He said to call his friend, a local sheriff deputy. Together, they would take care of everything. Meghan said she was freaked out by what she heard. Her dad's behavior took an even stranger turn one afternoon.
I was at the clothesline, and I had just gotten finished hanging stuff up, and I saw he was all dressed up in camo, and he was in his boots, his hiking boots, and I followed him out there. He didn't know I was following him because, I was just going to catch up with him. And he walked through the woods, like out by the horse barn.
Meghan said Dave walked through some woods on his own property and then crossed a road into some other woods that were on public land.
He walked clear to the embankment, the sandy embankment, and I followed him out. I got probably midway, and I had called for Benny, which was his dog, and he had turned around and saw that I was coming behind him. And he was like, what the F are you doing following me? I was like, I thought I'd join you for a hike.
Dave reluctantly agreed. As they walked, Meghan said she spotted a single shoe, a pink and black sneaker. It appeared to be a woman's shoe. She thought it was odd, but she kept walking.
And all I can remember is, who would leave behind a shoe at the embankment? And when I looked down the embankment, I saw this, I thought it looked like a body. It was wrapped up in something, and it was, sticking out of the dirt, and it had like a cylinder block over it, and I could tell it had something tied around it, like probably rope.
Meghan said she got scared at the sight, and she was trying to make sense of what she was seeing.
And I was going to go down there and check it out, but something told me not to, but the dog shot straight down to where this thing was sticking out of the ground in the embankment. And I was about to go down, but then something stopped me because I was getting kind of freaked out. And then when I looked up, I saw him, and he was glaring at me across the embankment. It was just like, it was a cold look, like nobody was there. Wasn't like it wasn't my dad. The dad that I knew and grew up with for like 5 years. He was a different person.
Meghan said Dave walked deeper into the woods, and she followed.
I was like, why are we going through here? He was like, I like to come out here to think. He's like, people come out here. He's like, I know we buried a few animals. He's like, and people bury their cattle out here. And I'm like, why?
As they walked, it got dense there with pickers and tall brush. Meghan eventually described a clearing in the woods where she saw what appeared to be man-made graves.
There were like about four of them, and there was like an aisleway where we were standing between them.
At this point, Meghan had never heard of Derrick Henagan, though she would soon start Googling missing persons in the area and come across his name. But as she was standing out there, she was trying to understand why anyone or anything would be buried there. Her dad did say that people bury animals, but Meghan said these mounds had the distinctive look of graves.
And he come to look at this one, and there was literally, he was taking sod, cutting sod from his yard and putting them on these humps. And it looked exactly like someone was laying underneath the settled dirt. And the dog had come up. The dog, was nosing around, and he started digging at one of these humps, and some black plastic tarp got exposed.
That's what got my heart rate up when we spotted that blue plastic jug from episode 1. Here we are out in the middle of those same woods, and there's this plastic thing sticking out of the ground. I thought for a minute maybe we were seeing what Meghan had seen. It didn't turn out that way, but it did make me think we were onto something.
What was going through your mind as you were standing there? What were you thinking you were seeing?
I thought I was seeing a burial site for people. I even asked him, what is this? And he looked at me and he goes, he's like, if you tell anyone about what you've seen out here today, he's like, I will go to the house. I will kill your mother in front of you and then kill you. A month later, I tried to OD because I couldn't live with what I saw. And then I couldn't live with being threatened and being scared. I think about that moment every single day. I carry it with me. I'd never in a million years think that my dad would do something like that. But I've had to live with the reality now for probably 6 years. Because that's ever since it happened.
We'll be back after the break. And we're back. Meghan said she didn't tell anyone right away, but eventually she confided in her mom, Amy.
We got into a discussion about how her dad was acting, and then we got home and, we had to get to the bottom of what was going on with her, and she finally told me what had happened in the woods.
When Amy found out, she tried to convince Meghan to report what she'd seen.
I said, we have to report this because we don't know what that is. who was out there, at least have it investigated. And she was scared to death. She's like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that because he'll come after us. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then that's what she told me. He had threatened to kill both me and her.
Meghan said she eventually did report what her father had asked her to do and what she'd seen in the woods. We see evidence of that in the reports the state police provided to us.
So, we put our trust in, his superiors, MSP, and they didn't care. They didn't care.
And they should have cared.
They should have cared.
One member of the Michigan State Police who did care, David Moeggenborg, when he got wind of what she'd done.
Meghan, it's Dad. Call me back. Right away. We can talk. I don't know what your games you're playing, but you are out of control. If I don't hear from you within an hour, I am calling and canceling car insurance, and I'm going to come and pull that plate off that car.
That's a voicemail David Moeggenborg left for his daughter. Meghan said she was genuinely worried that her dad might try to harm his second wife, Renee. So in addition to telling the state police and the county prosecutor about what her father had done and said, she also warned Renee's family, specifically Renee's mother, Marion. Marion called Charity, a woman that Dave was dating at the time. For Dave Moeggenborg, that was the final straw. He called Meghan again.
Meghan, it's Dad. What you have now done is unforgivable. So I don't know what you're doing, but you're a goddamn traitor. And you are now disowned from the family. Don't call me. Don't call Charity. Don't call anybody. You're on your own. I will never forgive you for being a goddamn traitor.
This was really hard for Meghan. She still had some good memories of her dad from when she was a kid. She'd visited him in the UP to try to patch things up. But now, he's calling her a goddamn traitor. And that word choice haunted me from the very first time I heard it. Goddamn traitor? Who calls their kid a goddamn traitor and disowns them in a voicemail? A traitor is someone who betrays a confidence and helps the enemy. That's like Benedict Arnold tipping off the Brits what the Americans were up to. He didn't call her a liar. He didn't claim she was delusional, that she was making stuff up. He called her a traitor. So is it possible to think that David Moeggenborg, a state trooper trusted to guard Michigan's governor, could be connected to the disappearance of Derrick Henagan? It's a question I've wrestled with in reporting this story. Domestic abuse is awful, and the psychology behind it is very dark. But murder? Or the cover-up of one? Or more? Meghan, she obviously believes that he is capable of it. Her mom, Amy, thinks so too. And when I asked Renee and Hunter about it, they felt the same way.
Do you think he was capable of being involved in the disappearance of Derrick Henagan?
Yes, absolutely. And now that the more I think about it, the more obvious it is, because he would always bring him up. And he would always make comments like, you know how many places you could kill somebody and get away with it? And, he would make comments about Derrick Henagan like, he's probably floating down the Taquamanon, or he's at the bottom of some lake.
Moeggenborg did know of Derrick. He took the stolen guns complaint when Diana suggested Derrick could be the thief. Derrick had enough run-ins with law enforcement up there that Moeggenborg definitely crossed paths with him. Derrick's name appears, along with many others, in a notebook Meghan has that belonged to her father. Renee is even willing to think the worst.
I think he's responsible for Derrick Henagan. I really do. After learning all these things, I believe he definitely is a part of it, if not the one who did it. I believe that. I believe he is capable of that. I know he is capable because of the things he has done to me and the things he has said to me and the looks he has given me and the way he's treated my son Hunter. I mean, we were driving home from Lower Michigan, and he looked at me and said if he could kill Hunter and get away with it, he would do it. And I looked out the window and I was like, tears rolling down my face, like, how could this man say that to me? And I believe he's very capable of it.
But what possible motive would Dave Moeggenborg have to be involved in the disappearance of a man like Derrick Henagan? Next time on Where Secrets Go to Die.
She literally laughed in my face, and she said, well, I'm not worried about it because I got Mo in my back pocket. I said, huh? She's like, I told you I have Trooper Moeggenborg in my back pocket.
This podcast is a production of the Detroit Free Press. It was investigated, written, and hosted by me, John Wisely. Our executive director is Anjanette Delgado. Our executive producer is Darcy Moran. Kathy Kalashevsky is our story editor, and Jim Schaefer is our managing editor. Nicole Avery Nichols is editor of the Detroit Free Press. Sound design and mix by Garrett Tiedemann. Original theme music by Camilla Cantu and Brian Castillo. Thanks to associate audio producer Robin Chan and development and contributing producer Tad Davis. And a special thanks to former Free Press photojournalist Kathleen Galligan, whose initial reporting was instrumental to this story. Outside audio in this episode was provided by 9 and 10 News, WLUC TV6, and Meghan Moeggenborg. For more on this story, including photos, videos, and source documents, see our Where Secrets Go to Die show notes. If you have a tip for me, you can send it in an encrypted email to wiselyj@proton.me. To support investigative journalism like this, become a Detroit Free Press subscriber. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast. That's a huge help to us. See you next time. If you or someone you know has experienced domestic violence, help is available through the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-SAFE or by visiting their website at thehotline.org. For help with mental health, visit samhsa.gov or call their hotline at 800-662-HELP for free confidential referrals.